This meeting is being live streamed, blah, blah, blah. Morning, Jose.
All right, it's up on the live stream, so people can hear us at this point.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to admit folks to the meeting. See McGee on there. We've got family. We're doing good.
Yeah, and then my mom is in there, Leslie.
Yep. Erin, I don't actually see. So right now it says waiting for Earyn McGee on your YouTube station. Good morning, everyone who's here already. We're getting some technical things figured out for Erin's streaming. We'll get started in a minute.
On my end, it says that it's live already.
Because I've got the YouTube page open, and mine says there's people waiting, and there's
same for me. That's what it looks like when I go and check.
Interesting. Okay.
This must be a first, right? So it's bound to have teething trouble.
Oh, that's so weird because I can see my PowerPoint on my end.
So is there something you have to do then to click to actually share it? Because on our end, it says at the bottom left corner, it says waiting for Earyn McGee.
Oh, I don't know.
That's what it says on your end, right, Danielle? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if some sort of button needs to be pushed. When I go to, because I can still access stuff, like when I went to the thing, the live on custom, I see a pull down menu. Is there anything that you need to do from there?
I'm trying to figure that out.
Good morning to the folks who are joining us. We're just getting some technical things figured out for Erin's live stream. So we should get started.
I live streamed my dissertation defense. And it was written up in Science magazine. And it's noted as the very first known PhD live stream defense. And this was back before any, like Skype was just really for phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
So I got like StreamX, and like we literally had to have a physical camera hooked to the computer to live stream.
I might try that because it's saying camera can't be accessed because of it's being used by another application. Let's see.
Zoom is a little greedy. When Zoom has the camera, it's really hard to do anything else.
Yeah, I think Erin thought we had got it figured out to stream it directly out of Zoom.
I like the idea. Yeah, I like that. So that way you don't have to have people in the Zoom room.
Right. And it's showing us that it's streaming live from our Zoom call right now, but it's not actually
but it's still
showing
just
up.
a placeholder.
Yeah.
People are in the chat, chatting it up. But they don't seem to have privy to like even this conversation right now.
Right, exactly.
Look at the folks showing up. All right, all right.
Let's see. So I have my other camera connected to the computer. And let's see how to get it connected for this.
See your post, Danielle, on the YouTube. Thanks for letting everyone know.
Yeah, appreciate you.
The folks who just joined in the last minute or so, we're trying to figure out Erin's live streaming. So we should be getting going in a minute here.
All right. It says going live and it's loading.
And I think if that doesn't work, Erin, then we can just record it. You can post it afterwards. I know people want to be on there live, but we should get going in a minute or two.
I agree. Can you click the go live button again?
Okay, I'm going to stop the current live. Meeting is now streaming live. Looks like this might actually be working. It's doing something different than it did before.
Okay. Are you seeing things now?
Not yet.
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's so weird. On my end, it is
Oh,
showing.
Earyn McGee live stream. Oh, it might be on. Okay, so it's not on the link you sent out, but it's on the.
Is it being streamed somewhere else that we don't know about?
Yeah, Erin, you're showing it on your live stream, not on the YouTube link you sent out.
Oh.
So if you can you get a link to that live stream? And if so, then Danielle or you could post it in the, or I could post it in the chat.
So I just
everybody's
grabbed the one that said copy link. And I just copied it, but I don't see anything. Someone just said go here, but I don't see.
Someone said I can see and hear.
Oh, really?
Yeah, someone said this is live.
Tell us where. They're saying this is it, but then the HTTP isn't actually showing up. All right, so Frank is letting folks know, but I don't know if they can see it.
Okay, well, if hopefully they're not the only ones. Okay.
Oh yeah, they put it in the chat.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Franklin and Stephanie.
Hold on, I'm going between. I'm gonna check it real fast.
I just checked. It is showing on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, but at a different line.
I post the second link that I posted should
Yep.
be the one. It's a little delayed from here, but yeah.
I see it too. There it is. I'm gonna do a really quick update on Twitter.
All
And
right.
then catch your breath.
Nothing
Right.
like technical difficulties to get the nerves out a little bit.
That's how it works.
we got the technical stuff out of the way. All right, Erin, I'm going to get us started then. And Danielle, thanks for giving the update on Twitter. Thanks to everybody who's joining us today here on the Zoom call. If you're within the U of A community or the broader YouTube community and Erin's broader social media world, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Michael Bogan. I'm Erin's dissertation advisor here at the School of Natural Resources and the Environment. And I'm very, very, very excited that we've gotten to this day after 5 years of hard work on the part of Earyn McGee, that we're here at the day of her dissertation defense. As a lot of you know, Erin has a very large following on social media. She's got about 60,000 plus followers between Twitter and Instagram. So she's been doing some amazing work in the outreach world and the communication world. She'll talk a little bit about that today. And she also did some great ecology research as part of her PhD as well. I first met Erin through one of her undergrad advisors, George Middendorf at Howard University. Before I even started this job, I reached out to George and asked him if he had any good undergraduates that might be interested in going to school here at University of Arizona. And the top person on his list and the only person that he was confident in recommending was Erin. And he said, Erin's one of the best natural historians, the best scientists I've ever worked with in the field, and she's a powerhouse and she's going to do good stuff. So if you're lucky, she'll come work with you at U of A. And I was lucky, and she did come and start as the first graduate student in the lab here at U of A. Erin has been extremely successful at getting support for her graduate research, the things that she'll tell you about she's been doing the last 5 years. So she was awarded a National Science Foundation Bridge to Doctorate Fellowship for the first 2 years that she was here. And the last 3 years have been covered by a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship program. In addition to that, that wasn't enough. Erin had to get some more scholarships and some more fellowships. So some of what she'll tell you about today is that she was an American Association for the Advancement of Science Mass Media Fellow. And also a AAAS If-Then Fellow, which ended up playing a pretty large role in her dissertation, as she'll talk about. Erin has also been an outstanding mentor to our undergraduates here. She'll mention some of that during her presentation, and in particular in the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program, where Erin has played a huge part in the lives of the undergrads that she's mentored. She was also a member and a co-chair of our department's Inclusive Excellence Committee for 2 years. So she has been just a fantastic person to have here at University of Arizona. As scientists, we know that our work, if we do our work well and we go out and we study our lizards in the right way and get some good results, we can contribute to the conservation of those species and those ecosystems. We can help those lizards survive into the future. And we know we have an impact in that way. But when we write our scientific papers and we make our publications, our impact is actually pretty small in the broader world, right? It might be a big deal to that little lizard, but it's not changing the world at large and not helping to fix some of the bigger problems that we have in the world. And so that's where Erin has really excelled, that she's looked beyond the realm of research, beyond this little scope of some of her research projects, and thought about how she can have the most broad impact possible in increasing both the conservation of our natural resources, the diversity of the practitioners that are doing that science, and helping to tear down some of the barriers and right a lot of the historical wrongs. Erin has just been incredible in that regard. Over the course of the last 5 years, I've learned as much from Erin, I'm sure, as she's learned from me. Maybe I've learned more. So that to me is the characteristic of a perfectly successful PhD student. So I'm very excited to now turn it over to Erin and have her talk about her dissertation and what she's been doing over the last 5 years or so.
Thank you, Michael, for that amazing introduction. And I am so happy to be here today to defend my dissertation, #FindThatLizard, Science Outreach and Supporting Underrepresented Groups in Herpetology and Natural Resources. So my dissertation really follows my journey as a person through academia and STEM. And so I have to take you back to the very beginning where as a kid, I was always interested in animals and nature. And here you can see me pictured at the Zoo Atlanta summer camp that I did when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Now, I don't remember a whole lot about this experience, but what I do remember was my excitement and anticipation for starting that week, how awesome it was that I got to go behind the scenes and see all the animals that you normally don't get to see at the zoo. And then I also got to see some people working with animals who looked like me. So little did I know, I was on my way to a career in natural resources. Fast forwarding a few years, I was an undergraduate at Howard University where I got the opportunity to be an environmental biology scholar. Through this program, I was able to go out into southeastern Arizona, the Chiricahua Mountains, and lasso my first lizard. And it was at that point when I knew this was what I wanted to do. So many of you may know me as Afro Herper, and you probably know my game, #FindThatLizard. But for those of you that don't, Find That Lizard is a game where I post a photo of a lizard camouflaged in its natural environment, and people have to find it. So normally what I do is I'll include some text that talks about the different life history traits and other facts about the lizards, but I can also use this space to talk about different conservation and environmental issues, as well as social justice issues. And surprisingly, this had like a really great response. People were actually into it. So on the top left here, you can see some fan art that I got from one of the kids who play Find That Lizard. On the bottom left, Sharkfin23 said, "Wow, I found it in record time. I really love this because I never appreciate reptiles until recently. Maybe one day I'll be good enough for Guess That Lizard." On the top right, Kimberly made Find That Lizard into part of her curriculum. In the bottom right, Chris B opens up her class with #FindThatLizard. So we're gonna get started here today with some Find That Lizard. So I'm only gonna give you guys about 10 seconds. So I marked out some places where the lizards could be A, B, or C. And you're looking for a Western banded gecko, and hint, hint, they like to wear white eyeliner. So that's a hint about what the lizard actually looks like and what it is that you're looking for. So I'm gonna give you about 10 seconds to lock in your answer. Okay, did you #FindThatLizard? I hope that you did. If you enjoyed that, I run this game every Wednesday at 5 o'clock Arizona time, and I hope to see you there. So as I already mentioned, my dissertation is influenced by a lot of my life experiences, some from my undergraduate researching, my genuine curiosity about nature, my experiences as a Black woman in a predominantly white field, and my desire to break down barriers. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about my 3 dissertation chapters, plus some of the outreach opportunities that I had that did not make it into the dissertation. So first, we're going to start off with how are lizards affected by stream drying, then move into a systematic review of barriers preventing Black women from entering and remaining in natural resources careers. 3, the BOLD program that I created to try to break down some of those barriers we talked about in chapter 2, and then finally getting into those other outreach activities. So starting off with some lizards. I was really interested in lizards and their diet. So are they eating emerging aquatic insects from stream systems? And so some of our main questions for this chapter were, are perennial streams providing aquatic subsidies to riparian lizards? Will lizard abundances be greater in perennial reaches? Will individuals within a species grow larger and faster along perennial reaches compared to ephemeral ones? So when you think of lizards and water, you don't necessarily put the 2 together. However, aquatic and riparian systems are tightly linked. So we have leaves that fall into the system as nutrients, and then aquatics that eat those leaves. And then when those aquatic insects move from their larval stage to their adult stage, they emerge into the terrestrial system, becoming food for organisms such as spiders, bats, birds, and then of course, lizards. So lizards are important to the environment because they're predators and they play a role in nutrient cycling. So if I asked you, what do lizards eat? You'd probably say insects, and you'd be right. And so previous studies have found that these lizards are eating things like wasps, cicadas, flies, and in times of low insect abundance, ants. But few studies have actually looked at exactly if the lizards are eating aquatic insects. So there was a paper done by Sable et al. Out in the Eel River in Northern California, and they found that those lizards had half of their diets made up by aquatic insects. So lizard diets could be more complicated than previously thought, as indicated by our Venn diagram here, which is showing a mixture of aquatic prey, terrestrial prey, and then the lizards. So knowing these things, if the lizards are eating aquatic insects and if they're important to the lizards, could be potentially really important, especially out here in the southwestern United States and Arizona, as we're in a long-term severe drought. And this is being brought on by human-caused climate change, human land use, and water use. So drought is causing streams to dry, and this can be really negatively impacting our stream system. So here on the left, you see a pool that is very lush and green, and under the surface are probably a lot of aquatic insects. However, when we have stream drying, all that green goes away, and then we also lose our aquatic insects from that system. So we predicted that lizard abundances would be greater and that individuals within a species would grow larger and faster along perennial streams as compared to ephemeral ones. So we have that illustrated with the figure here, where we have our dragonflies that indicate our aquatic subsidies, so aquatic insects, and those thick red arrows are suggesting that they have a greater access to these aquatic subsidies. So we're having larger and more lizards, while on the right, our cricket is illustrating our terrestrial insects, and those thick white arrows are suggesting that they have to rely on primarily terrestrial prey, and so the lizards are smaller and there are less lizards there. So I did my research out in southeastern Arizona on the border of Arizona, Mexico, and New Mexico in the Chiricahua Mountains. This study focused on 3 species of lizard: Scalopers yarrowi, yarrow spiny lizard; Scalopers brigatus, the striped plateau lizard; and Urosaurus ornatus, the ornate trees lizard. Data was collected in 5 study sites over the course of 2 summer field seasons. At each site, we had a paired 100-meter perennial reach and ephemeral reach. So with the perennial reach, there was water all the time throughout the summer, and then in the ephemeral reach, there was no water. And so this was the main difference between our reaches. The habitats were the same, mostly the same outside of that. They were far enough apart that we were confident that the lizards weren't moving between reaches, and that also the aquatic insects were not impacting the terrestrial lizards in our ephemeral reaches. So while we were out there, we were catching lizards, and we were catching lizards via lassoing, which is formerly known as noosing. And as a Black woman out in the middle of nowhere with very few other Black people, almost zero most of the times, it made me uncomfortable to be using that terminology talking about noosing things. So a couple of years ago, I started a social media campaign to change the terminology and make it more inclusive. And to my surprise, it's actually been catching on. So other scientists and herpetologists have been using the new and improved term lassoing, which is also a bit more accurate as we're not hurting these lizards. So once I captured the lizard, I took different body data such as mass, sex, length, and then once we caught them, before we let them go, we gave them a paint mark on the back, so that way we can know how many lizards were actually out there. And if we did not catch a lizard, we wrote it down that that individual was not captured. Insects were collected with emergence traps and beating sheets. And then finally, for stable isotope analysis, we took toe clippings from the lizard for permanent marking and the stable isotopes. So essentially stable isotopes are elements within tissues that allow you to see or make connections of what it is that animals are eating based on the amount of those elements within the tissue. So unfortunately, we were not able to include Eurosaurus ornatus, the ornate tree lizard, into our statistical analyses because of low sample sizes. So all of our analyses are going to focus on Scloperis yerevi and Scloperis rugatus. When considering lizard abundances, there were no significant difference between perennial and ephemeral reaches for either species. And so when you're looking at this box and whiskers plot, the thick black bar is our mean. And then for Scloperis yerevi, we did have one outlier. And so that's the circle that you see on the perennial side of the chart at the top. When considering mass at first capture, we did not see a significant difference for Scloperis rugatus, but we did see a significant difference for Scloperis yerevi. And so for rugatus, which are indicated by the circles, you can see that they're all kind of clustered closely together, whereas the triangles for yerevi, we have a lot of higher triangles on the perennial side than the ephemeral side. So for stable isotopes, again, we use toe clippings and for the lizard tissue, and then our aquatic insects that we captured and some of the terrestrial insects that we captured were used for these diet analyses. And so all of these boxes are showing us the results of the stable isotope diet analysis, and each box represents a different insect food resource for each of our two species. For examples, wasps, ants, and mayflies. Within each box, the red is the ephemeral and then the blue is the perennial and their contributions to the diet. If you look across all of these different boxes, the red and blue are just about the same for each of the potential prey items. So for both of our lizard species, they're basically eating the same things at both perennial and ephemeral reaches. This was a surprise because we thought the perennial lizards would be eating more aquatic insects. So overall, we did not detect a significant difference in lizard abundances between perennial and ephemeral reaches. And we're thinking that that might have to do with the fact that the Chiricahua Mountains are relatively lush. So there might have just been a lot of terrestrial insects for these lizards to eat. We did not actually measure the terrestrial insect abundances out there. And also our streams are very small, so there just might not have been that many aquatic insects available to them for it to have made a large enough difference. Secondly, next, Scloperis yerevi were larger at perennial reaches than ephemeral ones. However, this pattern did not hold for Scloperis rugatus, and lizards were eating the same things at both perennial and ephemeral reaches. So we're not quite sure exactly what was driving that trend for Scloperis yerevi. So future research should examine what is allowing Scloperis yerevi to do slightly better at perennial reaches than ephemeral ones. So while I was out there collecting all of this data, I wasn't alone. I had 3 sets of Doris Duke Conservation Scholars with me. And so the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program is this awesome program for undergraduate students that gives them 2 summers worth of field experience, one with a graduate student mentor like me, and then the other with any state, federal, non-government agency that they want to work with within the United States, as long as it has to do with conservation. And both summers are fully paid. However, when I was recruiting for this program, I had a really hard time recruiting other Black scholars, and I wondered why. And when I asked them, they were saying, well, you know, the environment is cool and all, but we have other interests. This is just not what we want to do for a career path. And so I was wondering, okay, we're not getting to these students early enough. What other kind of barriers might be present to keep students from being interested in these types of careers? So these experiences influenced my second chapter, which is a systematic review of barriers preventing Black women from entering and remaining in natural resources careers. And I focused on Black women because as a Black woman myself, those were the barriers and experiences that I could relate to and that I could speak better to. So some of our main questions were, what barriers do Black women face? What is being done to break down these barriers? And what more should be done? So Black women have always been contributors to conservation and environmentalism and natural resources. However, they have often been overlooked and even erased. For example, we have on the left here, we have a photo from the International Conference of the Biology of Whales in Virginia in 1971. And Sheila Minor Huff was the only Black woman there and really the only woman there. However, when the photographer was making the caption and putting down the names of the researchers, he left her out because she assumed that she had an unimportant role and was something like a secretary. And so many institutions over the years have realized they have an issue with the diversity and inclusion and including underrepresented groups, including Black women. However, despite all of these efforts, there have been no major increases in Black women in these spaces. So for Black women, science and social justice are often intertwined, and they're driven by a desire to serve their communities. However, these desires are not often seen as important to environmentalism and conservation. So we've decided to look at this literature review through the lens of epistemic injustice, which dictates that social identities can be used to discredit a speaker as a contributor to knowledge. And so for Black women, those social identities are being Black and being a woman. However, they intersect to create a new type of discrimination that is unique to Black women that's called misogynoir. So we found papers using Google Scholar with different keywords. I reached out directly to Black women who are in natural resources careers already, and I used my large social media network to find papers that I may have missed. And what was interesting when I was asking people on social media was that I got a lot of people pointing me to one Black woman, Dorceta Taylor, which indicates a lack of literature in this area. So for this literature review, as I've already stated, there's a lack of literature in this area. So that's specifically looking at Black women. So many of these studies are looking at underrepresented groups in general, but they often include Black women in their studies. So we found three major barriers that often overlap: structural barriers, cultural barriers, and class barriers. So starting off with structural barriers such as racism, segregation, and redlining. And redlining is essentially the systemic withholding of resources from certain groups. So for example, when you think about school systems, the better schools are in the richer areas because based on the taxes, more money is going to the schools because it's the richer area. So that's redlining. And so if you look on the right here, we have a couple of pictures, and some of them from national parks. And really this is just showing that there were certain areas designated for Black people to go so they could recreate in national parks. And if these areas didn't exist, then Black people were not allowed to recreate in those national park areas. So moving on to class barriers. On the right, we have a screenshot from REI's website, and you can see how expensive some of these items are. And you might be thinking, well, why don't you get something that's less expensive? Well, I don't know about you, but if you've ever been on a hike without the proper shoes, at the end of the day, you're not going to want to do another hike because your feet will really, really hurt. Having the right gear really makes the experience for you. So again, how I said that these barriers really influence one another, lack of generational wealth comes from racism and redlining and segregation. And so when you don't have that wealth, you can't afford to buy the proper equipment and you can't afford to actually do the activity that you want to do. So if you think of like rock climbing, so once you have the proper gear, then you also have to pay to go in and practice at a gym or something. Then you have to think about entrance fees and transportation fees. This stuff starts to add up. And then because people have not been able to have these experiences in the outdoors, they don't know about potential jobs, then you have less access to career paths. So within conservation and natural resources, a lot of internships are unpaid, and a lot of Black people cannot afford to do that. And because they don't have these experiences, that means that there are less Black people in these roles, so they have fewer role models to look up to. And then even once you get past all of these other barriers, there's unequal hiring practices, so then you still can't break into this kind of field. And finally, we're getting into cultural barriers. So Black people don't go outside, which is obviously not true. But here on the right, we have a picture from the Free Solo movie. And so this was about a white rock climber who is climbing up this huge mountain without any like supportive gear. So like if he falls, he falls. There's nothing to catch him. And so some Black women or Black people in general might look at that and be like, oh, we don't do that. That is not for us. And, you know, there's some truth to that, because going back to our other barriers, like our structural barriers, Black people were explicitly told, you cannot come recreate here. You cannot be in this job position, and so on. So that ends up being internalized, and people feel like they actually don't belong in these areas. And so the field of natural resources overall has ignored this perspectives and concerns of Black women. They don't see themselves in these careers. And even if they want to pursue these types of careers, their family might not support it. And for Black people and people of color in general, having family support is really important. Going back to the lack of generational wealth, families want their kids to pursue high-paying jobs so that they can start to build that wealth and hopefully bring it back to the family. Now, I've talked a lot about barriers, but don't get it wrong. Black women are here. We are participating in natural resources careers. We are participating in outdoor recreation. On the right here, we have pictures of some of my friends, some of the women who I look up to. We have Outdoor Afro, which is an organization created by Rue Mapp, a Black woman, to aid Black people in getting outdoors and getting those outdoor experiences. We have Girl Trek, which is also dedicated specifically to Black women and getting them outdoors. So Black women are here, but they need to be supported. The people who are already pursuing these careers, we need financial support and to be hired and things like that. There should be opportunities for Black women at every level. And then also there should be opportunities for Black girls for environmental learning and outdoor experiences. So what do we still need to do? Well, we definitely need to listen to Black women and give them the spaces to speak honestly and freely about the resources that they need. We need to hire Black women in leadership positions, offer paid research experiences for Black women at the undergraduate level and beyond, adopt actionable measures to break down cultural, socioeconomic, and institutional barriers. We should be working within Black communities, including with Black Greek letter organizations. And one of the things that we found is that we need to create outdoor opportunities for Black girls. And this is exactly what I did in my final chapter. So in my third chapter, I developed an outdoor program for Black girls called Bold, and I'm going to tell you guys all about that now. So if she can see it, then she can be it. This was the model of the AAAS If Then initiative, which funded this program. And then this program was also made possible by working with my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and the Delta Academy program. So our main goals were to increase participant interest and knowledge of natural resources careers, introduce students to pathways that they can follow to pursue a career in natural resources, and increase self-efficacy regarding their ability to be successful in a natural resources career. So be bold. Black Girls Outside Leadership Program Development. I was awarded a grant from the AAAS IFTIN Ambassadorship to create this program. So the BOLD program served middle school age girls from 2 cities in Arizona, Tucson and Sierra Vista. We met every other week for 5 months, and during that time, we had 9 speakers. During the weeks we did not meet, the girls were asked to do independent activities and to aid them in exploring nature on their own. They each received a nature pack, which included a camelback backpack with water bladder, vortex binoculars, compass, headlamp, and a book on natural history. So we had 9 speakers, all women of color, and I really wanted to bring together a diverse set of women so that these girls could see themselves reflected. I asked the speakers to not only talk about their science and their research, but to talk about their own hobbies and their family life so these girls can relate to them and see, oh, so there's not just a scientist, but this person is a mother and a sister, and she likes to write like me, or she likes to draw like me, and things that really help these Black girls connect to the speakers. And because of COVID-19, we had to have this program solely on Zoom. So I asked each of the speakers to lead an interactive activity with the girls. So for example, Simone Barkley, our marine biologist, led an activity where the girls created reusable bags from old t-shirts, and they really loved that. So at the beginning and the end of the program, we gave them a survey, and we wanted to see if participants could identify the career of speakers from a photo. How do participants relate themselves to science and incorporate it into their lives? And we asked them 2 narrative questions. What are natural resources, and would you like a career in natural resources? So we're only going to focus on the narrative questions in this presentation. However, if you're interested in the other 2 parts of the survey, I welcome you to read my dissertation. We also asked the girls to do independent activities. The first stayed the same throughout the whole program. We asked them to create full Instagram posts where they were being the science communicator. We asked them to create or find an image and then pair it with some text about the things that they learned during the presentation or that they thought was interesting and wanted to share with others. The second activity varied from week to week. It was a writing and drawing exercise meant to prepare them for the following presentation. So what are natural resources? These girls had a pretty good idea about what natural resources were, even in the pre-survey. So they said natural resources help with ecosystems and wildlife around you, and natural resources are resources that exist within mankind. And then in the post, one girl said, natural resources means to me is that people are studying about plants and animals. So not only are they talking about the natural resources in the abstract, but the people who are doing the work as well. Seeing other women of color doing this work, I'm hoping that that leaves a lasting impression on these girls. So would you like a career in natural resources? Some girls were interested in these careers even before the program. For example, one girl said, I would because I want to study flowers and bugs in everyday life. But some weren't interested. One said, no, I already know what I want to do. And what I want to be when I grow up. I do like nature, just not to that extent. But it doesn't, so that means that there's some interest in the environment, but they're not necessarily interested in the career. And so the point of this program was not to convince these girls to adopt a career in natural resources, but the survey did highlight that some of them were already interested. So we need to be providing these girls resources to find pathways into these careers. So going into the independent activities, first we'll start with the Instagram post. And this is a series of 3 posts from one of the girls. And so she said, what I learned in class is that there is a soil core that collects soil underwater. What I learned about wildlife is that there's a border separating animals from their habitats. What I learned is that I will face and overcome challenges in my life. And I thought that was a pretty powerful takeaway for a girl to have from this program. The other activity, which was to prepare the girls for the following week's speaker, in this case for Dr. Maya El Kapoor's presentation. She is a writer and editor at a major outdoor magazine. And so I asked the girls to write a poem about how they relate themselves to the outdoors. And so one of the girls wrote an acrostic poem, and she said, "Outdoors is where the animals are. Under the rock, I make dens. The sky is where birds fly. Duck, there is a pigeon. Over my head, I see the clouds that look like outrageous sun over my head too. Run, Stark is chasing me. So the outdoors is a wonderful place to be." Overall, the participants had prior knowledge and interest in natural resources careers, which means we don't need to be convincing them to go into these careers. It's not because necessarily a lack of interest in nature and the outdoors. What we need is to be giving these girls support. Then that means access to role models, which is what this program did, showing them people who look like them in these jobs that they could possibly have, giving them fun opportunities in nature. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we weren't actually able to meet and do hikes and other activities outdoors, but hopefully in the future, we'll be able to do that. And finally, educational pathways. So having like internships and fellowships and just creating more programs like BOLD, so these girls have the opportunities and the resources that they need to be successful in these careers. Finally, working with community is key. I would not have been able to pull off this program without my sorors of Delta Sigma Theta. These women were awesome. They helped with recruitment. They helped keeping the girls on task during the presentations. They made sure everybody was set up with Wi-Fi and laptops. They provided breakfast on the Saturdays that we met. They really did a fantastic job. And not only did they help me facilitate this program, when they were sitting in, they were learning this information themselves. So now they'll be able to spread this information even broader because they can share it with girls who did not participate in the BOLD program. All right, I know I've already talked a lot, but there were also a few other things that I did while I was a graduate student. So as a AAAS IFTHN ambassador, I was able to fund the BOLD program through a grant I received from this ambassadorship. And so the IFTHN ambassador program is all about uplifting and making women scientists more visible. And so one way that they've recently done this was they took 3D scans of the 125 women ambassadors, and they 3D printed us into life-size statues. So my statue and the statue of 4 other women scientists were actually at the Central Park Zoo in Central Park, New York for the last year or so. And then recently they moved to Dallas, Texas to join the other 120 ambassadors in Dallas's North Park Mall for the largest exhibit of women scientist statues ever. So this was a really awesome program to be able to be a part of. And not only was I a AAAS IFTHN ambassador in grad school, I was also awarded a AAAS Mass Media Fellowship, where I spent a summer working with the Las Vegas Review-Journal on SciComm articles that were about herps, of course. So I got to talk about night cruising for snakes. I also got to talk about climate change and the weather and air quality. So another headline that you might be familiar with is Christian Cooper and Amy Cooper out in Central Park last year. So if you aren't familiar, this incident happened where Christian Cooper, a Black man and a prominent birder, asked a woman, Amy Cooper, to put her dog on a leash because they were in a protected area. And instead of, doing the right thing, Amy Cooper instead decided to call the police on Christian and insist that he was somehow threatening to her. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, when police are called on Black people, sometimes those people can end up dead. So this was a very, very serious matter. So because of this event that Black birder Christian Cooper had to deal with, and also because of some of the other police brutality issues that were going on in the nation at the time. So with Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, me and a lot of my friends, many Black people who work in the outdoors or just nature enthusiasts, we were really upset that we didn't see any of our white colleagues also talking about this. This police brutality, this people calling the police on Black people for no reason is a natural resources issues because it impacts natural resources professionals. This could have been any one of us, because when we go out into neighborhoods and areas where people might think that we don't belong because we are Black, we are putting our lives on the line to do the work that we love, and that should be acknowledged. So we wanted to call out our white and non-Black peers for their silence, but we also wanted to celebrate ourselves and build community because we were going through a period of intense suffering and mourning. And because of that, we created the initiative Black Birders Week, where we had a week long of different activities, from asking people to post pictures of themselves in nature to hosting bird walks and live streams and all kinds of stuff. And we actually just finished the second annual Black Birders Week. And the great thing about this is, as long as Twitter and Instagram live, so do these weeks. So if somebody missed the first and second one, that's okay, because they can search any of these hashtags to find hundreds of other Black people who are interested in the outdoors and outdoor related careers. And what else has been incredible to see is that other Black people in other disciplines have adopted our framework to create their own week. So other Black people who are not being heard and not being seen are using this framework to do just that, and to change the narrative in their own fields. So what's next? I'm definitely going to continue to explore my curiosity for nature. There will definitely be more hashtag Find That Lizards. I love being outside and doing natural history work, so you'll catch me doing that. I'll be definitely breaking down barriers, and I one day hope to host a natural history TV show. So I'd like to acknowledge a lot of people. My undergraduate advisors, for starters, Dr. George Middendorf and Dr. Mary McKenna. Without them, there would be no Earyn, Dr. McGee, or, Find That Lizard. They really did believe in me, and I am so grateful for them. And then my graduate advisor and committee, Dr. Michael Bogan, Dr. Kevin Bonine, Dr. Danielle and Lee, Dr. Bill Mannon, and Dr. Jose Soto. And a special thanks to Dr. Corey Knox for all of her help with making the program possible. My lab mates, Susan, thank you, girl, because you helped me with R and getting all of my stable isotope stuff together. Kelsey, without you, that second summer would have been a bust. I appreciate you so much. Drew, Hamdani, Brian, and Miguel, thank you guys for always being so supportive and giving great feedback. Of course, my Doris Duke Conservation Scholars, mentees, Noel, Rezwana, Sterling, Francisco, Jasmine, and Stephanie, my friends and family, all the staff and volunteers at the Southwestern Research Station who helped get me set up and make sure I had the right permitting and helped me go out and lasso some lizards, my sorors on the Tucson Alumni chapter, and of course, all of you within my hashtag Find That Lizard community. So thank you. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Awesome, Erin. Thank you so much, everybody. Feel free to turn on your videos and give some applause or give some thumbs up. Use those emojis. That was an excellent presentation. And we are happy to take questions. So feel free to use the chat if you're on Zoom call, or you can unmute yourself as well and pop in with the question. Thank you, Erin.
Hi, Erin. Hey, Mike.
Hi.
It's Chris. I just want to say, excellent work. And this is, I want to say I'm surprised, but I can't. I've known you since the summer before you were a freshman. And when you came into the lab then, I remember George turning to me and to Steph and Tasha saying she's going to be a rock star. And he wasn't wrong. I'm just very, very proud of the work that you've been doing. in all aspects of this. And it's really critically important, the kind of work that you're doing and being able to take this in multiple directions. At some point, I would like to follow up with you a little bit more on the stable isotope work that you did. I happen to know somebody who's got a rack of lizard toes. So
I was thinking about that, and I was just like, well, it's a little bit past the scope of this study, but one day, that whole entire room, something should be done with those.
Oh yeah. But excellent work, Erin.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hi, Erin. This is Dave Brashears.
Hi.
Really fantastic work, and I learned so much just in that short seminar. So that was really fantastic. I'm going to ask you about the first part of your dissertation. I'm wondering if you can comment on, then, given your results that you found, what are the implications for climate change as we're going into these more serious and severe conditions?
So, as I mentioned, we didn't have any significant results looking at specifically the lizard diets. However, we do know that stream systems are important to terrestrial systems just because of the actual water itself. So if these lizards are losing access to this water source, then that could negatively impact them indirectly.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And again, wonderful presentation, and I learned an awful lot.
Thank you.
Hi, Erin. This is Manette. I'm so proud of you. And lizards and bugs kind of creep me out, but I learned so much today. That was an excellent presentation.
Thank you, Minnie. Michael, can you see maybe in the YouTube in chat if anyone has any questions over there?
No, but that's a good idea, folks who are listening on YouTube. Go ahead. I've got the chat open. So if you've got a question, we can read it out via YouTube. There's a lot of congratulations, a lot of excitement, a lot of proud people over there, and same in the Zoom chat. So we'll make sure we save that so you can read every one of those afterwards.
Yeah, that would be great.
We got a question from Franklin Joaquin saying in YouTube, saying, do the lizards regrow the toes that you clipped when you're doing the stable isotope study?
So they do not regrow the toes. I only take toes from adult lizards. And also I only take 3 toes because taking more than that has been shown to inhibit their ability to live. So 3 toes is pretty much consistent with what everyone else does and doesn't seem to impact their ability to go about their lizard lives.
So I have a question related to the stable isotopes. How long does it take before the material that's going to show up in the toes from the time they eat it to the time it shows up in the toes? And how did that relate to when your timing on the study that you did?
So that is a good question, and the literature is still out for debate on that. So it can depend, and also it depends on what needs that lizard has at that particular time that it's consuming those insects. So depending on their actual consumption needs, different levels of the same prey types can be incorporated at different levels.
Okay.
And we've got a question here from Adasor in the YouTube. 2 questions, actually. 1, how did you settle on your project? And 2, how did you choose your lizard species in question?
Okay, so so when Michael and I were first talking about me potentially being in his lab, he said, how can you relate lizards to aquatic invertebrates? And so this project is what I came up with. And then for the other 2 chapters, I kind of blindsided him with those. I was just like, listen, this is also things that we need to do here. And so that's how we came up with those final 2 chapters. And then the lizard species were chosen because I had worked with them as an undergraduate student. So I already knew a bit about their life history. I already knew that I had the capacity to capture them. And they are some of the most abundant in the Chiricahuas in general. And so we were hoping that those things in combination would get us a pretty robust data set.
Hey, Erin, congratulations. That was a great presentation and congrats. But I have a question that I feel like I should know the answer to, but I don't know anything about lizards. So do the species that you studied, do they directly drink water? Or, I mean, it seems like it'd be important for there to be perennial streams that they can have access to, or at least perennial water sources, even if they're not feeding off of aquatic insects. But how do these lizards get water?
So they mostly get water from their prey sources. So it would, we would think that since they are eating some aquatic insects, it wasn't a significant amount or a significant difference from our results. Prey would be important that way. So their water resources primarily comes from the food that they're eating, but water is also good for these lizards because water in the system like cools down the area. So a lot of times people think of like lizards, desert, heat, okay, whatever. But like the lizards have like a certain heat threshold. And if they go above that, then they're not going to be able to, you know, survive unless they evolve to tolerate those higher temperatures.
Right. All right. Thank you so much. And congrats once again. You did great.
We've got a question from YouTube about future plans from April saying, do you have any plans to teach a course on science communication, especially inclusive strategies, social media use, etc.?
I have no plans for anything right now but to sleep. I'll figure that out in a little bit. But if somebody wants to offer me a job, send me an email.
Okay, we got time for one more question or so if somebody's got a question.
Hi, Erin. I have a question. So I think what you did was unbelievably amazing. There's no doubt about that. I'm wondering if at some point you may think about taking the bold and incorporating young Black boys.
So I was focusing on Black girls specifically because that is what my granting agency was looking at. So through my sorority, they also work with Black boys. So that is something that could be done in the future.
Great, thanks.
And then we've got the last few comments in YouTube, basically asking about where Find That Lizard might be going. So both how might you see it growing and evolving, and have you actually studied who participates in Find That Lizard? And I'll just add in here that as you all see, Erin did a lot of work and she presented 3 chapters. We had ideas for about 7 different chapters. And so these 3 that actually went in are what we finally settled on. But one of them was going to be that actual analysis of Find That Lizard, who participates, how it reaches people. So Erin, what do you see for the future of Find That Lizard?
I don't know. I'm hoping that now I'm gonna have time to do more. What I really want to do is to travel some and to find more species and include a greater variety of species and Find That Lizard. And I get a lot of really good feedback when I create like little videos that show the lizard interacting with its environment and talking a bit more about their natural history. So I'd like to be able to create more of those as well.
Great, thank you. A round of applause again for Erin, please, everybody. We are gonna, for the committee on Erin's dissertation committee, we're gonna join the second Zoom link that I sent you at, we're gonna say at 10:20 a.m. So we got a little bit of a break here. Those of you who are on YouTube, thanks so much for attending. And we will switch now to just a few minutes on Zoom only so that Erin can visit with friends and family that want to congratulate her individually. But excellent job, Erin. And thanks everybody for tuning in on YouTube.
Thank you guys.
Good job, Erin. I'll see you back in 10 minutes or so.